But we start here. Former Chief Justice Raymond Zondo is concerned about the impact of corruption on basic services. That was during an event held by the South African Council of Churches. We get more of what was shared in that all-important discussion around how we need to deal with corruption in the country. We're joined by the Whistleblower House Executive Director, Mr. Ben Teron. We're joined by the South African Council of Churches General Secretary, Reverend Mzwandile, and of course, Public Service Commission Chairperson, Professor Somadoda Figeni. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Reverend. So much to talk about because, and I think we will get to what we've been watching in the National Assembly. But first, if you could kick us off, Reverend Molo, the importance of the South African Council of Churches having this sitting where you speak to thought leaders in the country about what we do about the massive corruption allegations that the country is facing at the moment.
Good evening, Naledi, and thank you for having us to share with you some of the work that we did during the day. The point of departure in Naledi is the South African Council of Churches believes that we need to have and add our voice on the work against corruption that is so rampant in our society. The SACC in its conference in 2024 gathered and tried to analyze for itself what the country is going through. There are many things that we reflected on. One of the dangers we saw is the reality that corruption is going to override us, not only in terms of what it takes away from who we are in terms of rands and cents, but its ability to corrupt our own fundamental sense of understanding who we are and how we relate with one another. So for us, it stops therefore being simply about rands and cents. It becomes about who the country chooses to be. And because we believe that we are inspired by God's vision for the world, inspired by what God has for South Africa, we thought that it is best for us as church leaders to spend some time in the last day or two to simply understand as best as we can, beyond headlines, the nature, the expression, and the realities of corruption. And that's why we had so many of these leaders in our midst today to reflect with them, guided by our own principles of God's justice and God's commitment to mutuality, honesty, and transparency.
Yeah. You know, I'm hoping that in this discussion I'll be able to, pick out as many of those thoughts from the speakers that you're able to share with us. But let me continue doing that with Mr. Ben Teron, Executive Director of Whistleblower House. Some of the key moments that stand out from you, for you in the discussion today at the SACC's Anti-Corruption Conference. But we've been watching activities now in the National Assembly. And at the same time, you've got the Government Gazette out for the Madlanga Inquiry. Recommendations of an ad hoc committee and this inquiry now fully in the works. Are you optimistic?
First of all, let me thank the South African Council of Churches for taking this opportunity, pausing in their work, day-to-day work, to take stock of where we are as a country. Because it's important that we take stock. And over the last 30 years, we have deteriorated as a society, and today we confirmed that deterioration. And I think that today allowed us just to pause and map a little bit of the way forward. We as the Whistleblower House think that we are in a quagmire and we need to very carefully map our way forward out of this. We are hoping that, and we haven't seen the terms of reference because I was at the conference the whole day, so I don't know what's in it.
Sure.
We're hoping it's wide enough to do the investigation. I hope there's enough time. But I think that today the church has decided, and they will continue the discussion tomorrow, what is required for South Africa to map the way forward. And those steps will be absolutely critical to feed in to the national dialogue that will happen next month as well.
Yeah. These are big discussions that we're having as a country, aren't they? The national dialogue coming up next month. You've got this inquiry, an ad hoc committee that's also set to get going. Prof, I wonder if, South Africans at this time are able to walk as they chew, if you will. And if you're encouraged by, for instance, what we see going on in the National Assembly, we've got the appropriations bill crossing the line, that now we can, start focusing on the next problem that is facing us and which one we need to put first, Prof. Oh, I think your mic is off, Prof.
I think the first thing that one should appreciate is the fact that the budget issue is put on the side so that the country can focus on the real issues at hand, especially the current crisis in terms of corruption, especially your syndicated corruption. So I do think that, one, the investigations as well as the commissions should go their way. Parliament should play its role. But in the national dialogue, it would be very important that we put the issue of how we join our efforts in fighting corruption, which has become a cancer that has eaten away every other gain that we started with. It is probably the biggest battle we have ever fought since the end of apartheid. We'll need the same maximum societal mobilization in the same manner as the mass democratic movement was in the 80s. And in so doing, we will be able to isolate the syndicated and the mafia groups, the extortionists and so forth, and begin to reclaim the space. The challenge that we see is that a majority of people who want to see good are not well organized, but criminals who may be few have more impact on society because they are a lot more organized. So the meeting today was about to say it's a rallying call to call government, private sector, to call civil society into this battlefront.
Yeah. You know, Mr. Turon, one of the things that we heard in the discussion that you had today in with the South African Council of Churches was Justice Zondo talking about, you know, just the changes and, you know, for instance, the predecessor to the Hawks and how he felt, you know, it was such an injustice to do away, for instance, with the Scorpions. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that. But you did earlier talk about the scope of what this Gazette looks like. And I do want to share that with you. Of course, it does say that the interim report needs to be given to the president within 3 months, and then a final report after 6 months of its establishment, or such extended period as the president may determine. So I raise that because when we're looking at an issue as big as corruption, for instance, in law enforcement, do we really expect that we can get that job done in 6 months when, for instance, the Zondo Commission took us 3 years?
I want to start off where the professor stopped,
Sure.
Where he said, we as a country need to do certain things. One of the pillars that we require for this to happen would be the law enforcement agencies, the MPA, the Hawks, SIU. All those organizations must work very hard with society, because it doesn't help we work hard and they are unable to bring to fruition what we're working towards. I like the way it's been phrased. As long as the president agrees, then it can be extended. So I think it's a bit optimistic at the pace of things. When you watch Hollywood movies, they say people will lawyer up.
Yep.
And I believe lawyering up will happen very quickly. We need this to be concluded so that we can map a way forward for the police. The police is critical for us in the society. The police minister problem should be sorted out. I've got great faith in the professor that will take over temporarily, that he will do the right thing. He's got a great reputation, and we will support him in that way.
Yeah. In the meantime, Reverend Molo, you've got South Africans watching and saying, well, we do want answers because we want the confidence that we should have in the law enforcement agencies in the country to be restored. I wonder if in the past week or so we've actually been able to chip some of that back, in your view. For instance, with the police minister going on special leave. Just yesterday, we saw the Patriotic Alliance, for instance, suspending its own deputy president within its party, which is very interesting after Kenny Kunene, for instance, was caught by police at the house of a suspect in one of these high-profile cases. Do you think that with the movings of the various chess pieces on the political landscape, we have been able to claw back some of the public confidence, Reverend?
Naledi, the truth is the experts on political readings, Professor Figeni and them are better equipped than I do.
Yeah.
But what I am prepared to say is this: South Africans are impatient with anything that seems to indicate to them that they're not taken seriously. That South Africans are impatient with this idea that the political elite find a way either to delay what should happen, to obfuscate, to do things that in their own eyes they seem to be like, this doesn't seem to indicate any deep seriousness in those in power to deal decisively with this cancer. So for us, it is not only about those who are in front of us right now, it is about the leadership from the presidency, for example, and I hear what you're talking about, the Patriot Alliance, to indicate decisively that actions are being taken. And part of what we hope for is that as much as this judicial inquiry is taking place, the new acting minister will not be hampered into doing that which is administratively in his purview to do, so that the cleaning up does not wait for something like 6 months later. So part of that we are watching for is not only what this inquiry is going to do, it is what is the work done with whatever political support exists, whatever resource support exists for this one to do. The issue around making sure that the commission doesn't take too long is important, but at the same time, we do not compromise it by pressing it too much in the squeeze time, because due process needs to take place and things need to be ventilated. At the same time, the president should be watched carefully so that he does not exploit for political gain and kicking the can down the proverbial road and into extending this thing into a place where society begins to think this is the same thing that has been done in the past.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, do stay with us. We'll take a short break and then we'll come back. We will continue the discussion and open the lines up for our viewers as well. Give us a call on 010-594-6010. Lots at play this evening as we speak to some of the contributors to the South African Council of Churches discussion on anti-corruption. As we've also seen the Madlanga Inquiry being commissioned, gazetted by the President this evening, the ad hoc committee to look into Kwanazi's allegations also being put forward to the National Assembly. Will react to the next steps and what it is that South Africans really want to see as all of these processes get going on the other side of this. We come out just a little bit there as we continue to listen to the political parties in the National Assembly now deliberating on the presentation of that joint report by the Committees of Police and Justice and suggesting, of course, as per the instruction of the Speaker of the House, that they would like to see an ad hoc committee coming forward. Many of the political parties that we're hearing this evening in support of that ad hoc committee to look into General Mkwanazi's allegations just a few weeks ago. But some interesting perspectives, though, on how things should run out. And, of course, we are still in conversation with Mr. Ben Turon, Executive Director for the Whistleblower House, Reverend Mzwandile Molo, General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, as well as Professor Somato Figeni, Chairperson of the Public Service Commission. Lots to listen to. And, of course, the three gentlemen were today part of the South African Council of Churches' own deliberations on anti-corruption in the country. Prof. Figeni, I do want to come to you with this one. BOSA's representative there in the National Assembly raising an interesting one, saying that the role and outcomes of what Parliament is able to do versus what an inquiry is able to achieve at the tail end of its work, she says, very different. There is the fear of overlap of these two processes, ad hoc committee and the inquiry, and that Parliament, though, has to, at the end of it, be able to find political accountability. Is that something that we need to be reflecting on, you know, the difference of the outcomes of the ad hoc committee versus the inquiry?
Well, I do think that that should not really matter if the agenda is to find out what the problems are. And ultimately, it's the same executive, same public service that is going to implement, and it's the same parliament that is going to come up with policies to correct any weaknesses which are in the system. But I want to add one more point. Instead of waiting for investigations, I would be certain that Auditor General, year in, year out, will have made findings on the same departments which are being fingered out. Public Protector, Public Service Commission, and therefore you can also go to Dr. Sidney Mufamadi findings after investigation on the security and the intelligence in particular. So government has something to start working on. They do not have to wait for 3 months, for 6 months. If there are findings on a procurement, work should start now. If there are findings on certain other things which are improper or governance challenges, work should start now. And there are many other reforms in the pipeline that could start being effected. For example, if you start covering all the affected individuals with a lifestyle audit that is targeted, that in itself is already a policy in place, and it will be augmenting other things, and the public will restore their faith in the system as they start seeing certain things, just like SIU or Hawks are beginning to do their work, and they are beginning to effect some arrests.
Yeah, and one of the suggestions, of course, by Bossa is that a full-scale SIU investigation also needs to be taking place, concurrent to all of these processes. Mr. Turan, I want to come back to you. The leader of the National Coloured Congress, seemingly, though, not so much in support of the perspectives that are largely shared by so many on the allegations put forward by General Mkhwanazi. In fact, the NCC being quite outspoken about why Mkhwanazi would come forward with some of these allegations. And one of the things that he says is that whether we are in the ad hoc committee or the inquiry, Mkhwanazi does not need to be seen as a whistleblower, as the whistleblower house. What do you say to that perspective?
Well, our definition speaks beyond the definition of the legal definition as we look at it. And then the legal definition speaks about a relationship between inside an organization. We regard the general as a whistleblower, and he needs the protection of a whistleblower. I said it before. The difficulty he has is that the individuals and the organization that he has fingered is now expected to provide him with security and to ensure that safety of his family and him are all there. I wouldn't feel safe under those conditions, because whatever he uncovered, the sore that is scratched open is huge. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to come out of there, and it's not going to be pretty, but it need to be aired out. It needs sunshine so we can discuss it.
Yeah. And it's going to be an ugly look at that. So, Reverend, the ANC, just as we came out there saying, and this is important, the ANC says it will not shield any wrongdoing. I mean, talk to me about the weight of that statement as the ANC in Parliament contributes to, the work of, that should come of the ad hoc committee.
Naledi, in many ways, it should not be a surprising statement to make. It should be a normal statement to make. None of us are above the law. None of us should hide behind our political affiliation. None of us should hide behind political power that we have. So for us as the church, there's nothing startling in that statement. It should be a normal statement to make. And therefore, all of us should expect on anybody and everybody to say, when people face allegations, even if they are in the church cannot say it to themselves because this is part of us, is one of us, therefore they will be defended, and therefore we need to make publicly that we will not shield them. No. Shielding people based on political affiliation is a direct attack not only on our constitution, but also on our value system of equality before the law. So for us, as the SACC, I'll perceive the statement as a statement that we ordinarily expect, so that we do not exceptionalize that which is ordinary. We should not clap hands for things that should happen as a matter of course.
Reverend, I want to stay with you because this is, I suppose it is a moment where South Africa really needs to find, once again, its moral center, right? And just where you place that and just how, bad things are. We're talking essentially about not just government officials, but law enforcement with allegations to having friendships, a comradeship with the people that are considered criminals, some of them serving time behind bars, so facing allegations as big as attempted murder in some cases. Firearms that are found in homes that are behind the murders of big superstars, and then having such close relationships with politicians that in some cases when police arrive, they find you there in the house with an official. I mean, I think that's time. It's time that we reflect on that a little bit, right? Just how far off we've gone.
Throughout the day, beyond the issues of what are we doing by law to detect, to protect, and then to hold accountable, the underlying theme that came throughout the conversation of today is how society is morally collapsing. How we as society are unable to agitate and advocate and live by the virtues that we know define who we are at our best. The virtues that and values that our mothers taught us, the virtues and values that our fathers taught us, the things that our parents taught us, that if you have things that don't belong to you, we cannot look away as parents. You have to explain to us, where does this thing come from? Where do you get this money to buy these things? When you come home and you have groceries and your mother knows that you're not working, the normal question will be, where do you get this money to buy these things? So there's a deep need for us as a society, beyond the administrative questions, to go to the values and moral questions that should hold us together. And the truth is, that is beginning to collapse. And part of the conversation we're talking about today is how then do we act together consistently in a way that makes sure that those values come back. One of those values is simply to say whistleblowers are not impi, for example. Whistleblowers are people who stand up for that which is right. And therefore, we should change the narrative so that what they do in protection of society is not negatively impacted by our own past, where when people were taking things to authorities, they'll be seen as impi. Those are values that we must go and remember ourselves. I remembered today, Naledi, when the leaders were talking, that part of the things we used to do in the times when we were fighting apartheid, some of us would take things from and steal something there, and when you ask, what are you doing? Some of us will say, Dibuse Zobawo, which means I'm bringing back that which belonged to our people. That in some ways normalizes some of thieving that we must deal with right now, because we now find a way to deal with our moral character as society, from family to community to schools to churches, all of us playing that big part in recentering our moral character as a nation.
Yeah. I must say that when we use the language and we bring up this issue of language, a whistleblower is not Team BMP. We can certainly say it on these kind of platforms. But when you are deeply embedded in the system that is a law enforcement system that is facing a crisis with the magnitude that it's facing right now, and you've got a list of people that we're expecting to come forward in an ad hoc committee and an inquiry, Mr. Turon, it's not just as simple as just saying the words, right? That a whistleblower is not an imbimbi. That these are people that might very well take the podium and face a real threat in the months that come.
What I experienced today is not a revelation within the South African Council of Churches. I think there were deep introspection before today happened. And today was called after introspection and some research and discussions done privately. So I was excited to participate today where the call that the Whistleblower House have been doing for the last 3 or 4 years about changing the narrative was a clarion call coming out of the conference today. And we're hoping that tomorrow's session will concretize that, and so that the church will adopt that. And when the church adopts that and it takes root in South Africa, we can start looking at a new language around whistleblowing. And we need to do that.
What does that sound like, though? That's the reality. And this is why I raised the issue about, whistleblower versus Mpimpi. It's a language, but it doesn't necessarily take away the threat that these individuals face. Hence, we do have and still commemorate the lives of the likes of Babita Deokaran.
Maybe I should just be straight.
Yeah.
We shouldn't allow politicians to drive narratives. What you find, and not only politicians, but people who are threatened by the truth, will now go out and say, Mpimpi, this person shouldn't be talking. The first reaction to General Mokonazi was not what he was talking about, but the way he was dressed. So what we tried doing was to digress. Let's just cause havoc in this conversation. Luckily, South Africans saw through that and said, no, you will not touch General Mokonazi. We will stand by him, and we will expect him to come forward with more information and uncover everything.
Yeah.
The more people start talking about whistleblowing as truth seekers and defenders of the truth, this country will start improving.
Yeah, I'm out of time, but Prof. Vigeni, I need to let you have a last bite there. And this is really just, I suppose, a litmus test for you on where we are as we close off the day. The budget has passed the line. You've got ad hoc committee being put forward, inquiry being gazetted. Are we optimistic about where we're at as we close off this day? Your thoughts?
South Africa has been down this road of brinksmanship when you think everything is going to fall apart. We are a society that is so resilient, so resourceful that we're able to pull together and then retrieve ourselves back into the high ground. And one hope that this opportunity of many crises is presenting itself for us to finally have the courage, honesty, leadership, and vision to deal with the issues which were always staring at our face, but we have been pretending that they'll go away without us taking a bold action.
Yeah, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I imagine that there'll be a lot to talk about over the next few months. Lots of talking that South Africa will be doing. Thank you to Mr. Ben Turon, Executive Director of the Whistleblower House, Reverend Mzwandile Molo, General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, as well as Professor Somadoda Vigeni, Chairperson of the Public Service Commission. We take a short break. We are back in a moment. Stay with us.